Welcome to our deep dive. We're going behind the scenes of Ulta Beauty. Um, you know their annual report, and I know what you're thinking. Annual report's super boring, right? But trust me, this is not your typical dry financial jargon. It's actually a fascinating look at how Ulta became a beauty giant.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This report, it's packed with insights, not just for investors, but for anyone who's ever, walked into an Ulta or even just browsed their website.
So, like, basically anyone who loves beauty, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's set the stage a little bit. The report starts off, by painting a picture of how dominant Ulta is. I mean, they're the largest specialty beauty retailer in the U.S. They have 13,385 stores.
And that's huge. But they're not just about those physical stores anymore.
Right. They're doing a lot online, too.
Yeah, they've really embraced this whole idea of an omnichannel experience.
Omnichannel, what does that even mean?
So basically, it means they're not just thinking about their online presence as a separate thing. It's all integrated.
Yeah.
Like their online store, their loyalty program, even their social media. It's all connected.
Yeah, makes sense. So it's not just about, buying something online. It's about having this whole experience with the brand.
Exactly. And the numbers show it's working.
Yeah.
Like the loyalty members who shop both in-store and online, they spend almost 3 times as much as the people who only shop in stores.
Wow. Okay, so that loyalty program, that's pretty powerful.
It is. It's not just about, convenience or discounts. It's about creating a deeper relationship with the customer.
I can see that. Okay, so we've talked about how big they are, but they're not just sitting back and relaxing, right? They've got big plans for growth.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're continuing to open new stores, but they're also investing heavily in their digital capabilities.
So what does that look like? Like, what are they actually doing online?
So, for example, they just finished this big upgrade to their e-commerce platform.
Oh, wow.
And they're really focused on making that online experience super personalized.
Personalized.
Yeah. So, think about virtual try-on features.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can try on different makeup looks, without even leaving your house.
That would be amazing.
Right. And they're also doing things like incorporating editorial content, beauty tips, trend reports, and they're really active on social media.
So they're really trying to create a whole community around their brand.
Yeah, exactly. It's smart because nowadays a successful retailer can't just be a place to buy things. They need to be a source of inspiration and advice and, connection.
Makes sense. Now, one thing I was curious about, with all these stores and all this online stuff, they must have a ton of inventory.
They do, but they have a really disciplined approach to managing it.
So what does that mean?
Well, they use point-of-sale data, open-to-buy plans, and they track their inventory levels every single week.
Every week.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Okay, so they're really on top of things.
They are.
But is there ever a downside to being so organized?
I mean, you could argue that it might slow them down a bit if there's a sudden change in demand or like a new trend pops up.
Right, they might not be able to react as quickly.
Exactly, but they're really good at analyzing data, and they have strong relationships with their brand partners, so they try to minimize that risk.
I see. Okay, so let's talk numbers for a minute. Their financial performance in fiscal 2023 looks pretty good.
It is. Net sales increased by 11.1%, and they hit $10 billion in sales.
$10 billion.
That's huge, especially these days.
So what's driving this success?
Well, a few things. One is they've been able to improve their gross profit margin, partly by leveraging fixed costs.
Leveraging fixed costs?
Yeah, basically spreading those costs over a larger volume of sales.
So like the more they sell, the less each individual sale costs them.
Right. And another factor is their other revenue sources, like their credit card program and their partnership with Target.
So it's not just about selling makeup?
Nope. They've got multiple streams of income.
That's sweet. Now, I did notice that their SG&A expenses went up.
You're right. Their selling, general, and administrative expenses did increase. And that's mainly because they're investing more in things like labor marketing and technology.
So they're spending money to make money.
Exactly. It's a calculated risk, but it's essential for growth.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, even with all this success, we can't ignore the risks, right? I mean, every business faces challenges.
Of course. And the report does a good job of outlining some of the key risks that Ulta is facing.
So, like, what are some of the things they're worried about?
Well, competition is always a factor. They're up against other beauty retailers, department stores, online marketplaces.
Yeah, it's a lot of competition.
And another risk is their dependence on brand partners.
Right, because they have all those exclusive products.
Exactly. It's a great way to attract customers, but it also makes them vulnerable if those relationships go sour.
So it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
What other risks are there?
Well, supply chain disruptions are a big concern, especially with everything that's been happening in the world lately.
Right, like the pandemic and everything?
And then there's cybersecurity threats.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one these days.
And even things like climate change.
Climate change?
Yeah, it can disrupt operations and, lead to new regulations.
Wow, okay, so they're really thinking about everything.
They are.
Now, there's one more thing that's specific to Ulta because they operate in California.
Right. Proposition 65.
Yeah, that one's tricky.
It is. It requires warnings for products containing certain chemicals. And it exposes them to potential lawsuits.
So they have to be really careful.
They do.
Okay, so we've talked about competition, supply chain issues, cybersecurity, climate change, Proposition 65. Is there anything else?
I think those are the big ones.
Okay, well, that's a lot to think about. But before we move on, there were a few things in the report that I found really interesting. Like, for example, their ability to get those exclusive products from popular brands. That's a big deal for customers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a major differentiator for them.
Like, it makes them stand out from the crowd.
Exactly.
Another thing that caught my eye was the mention of inventory shrink. Apparently, it had a negative impact on their gross profit margin.
Yeah, it's interesting because it shows that even with all their sophisticated systems, they're not immune to real-world problems like theft or, administrative errors.
Right. It's a good reminder that running a business is never perfect.
Exactly.
Okay, so one last thing I wanted to touch on, their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, that's something they talk about a lot.
But are they actually doing anything?
Well, the report does go into some detail about their initiatives. They're focusing on inclusive recruitment training, leadership development, even creating more equitable experiences in their stores.
Okay, that all sounds good. But how do they measure their progress?
They do provide some metrics on their diversity profile, like the gender and racial breakdown of their workforce.
So that's a good sign. It shows they're at least trying to be transparent.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've talked about their omnichannel strategy, their focus on personalization, their inventory management, their financial performance, the risks they're facing.
It's a pretty comprehensive look at their business.
It is.
And I think what's really impressive is how strategic they are. They're not just reacting to trends. They're actively shaping the future of beauty.
One question that keeps coming up for me is, how will all these new beauty trends and technologies impact them?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, we're seeing this surge in personalized skincare, AI-powered beauty tools. Even the metaverse is starting to influence how people experience beauty.
So will Ulta be able to adapt?
Well, that's what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, folks. We're about to go even deeper into the world of Ulta Beauty.
Okay, so we were talking about the future of beauty and how Ulta's going to navigate all these new trends and technologies.
Yeah, like it seems like every day there's something new. Personalized skincare, AI-powered tools, the metaverse.
It's a lot to keep up with.
So how is Ulta staying ahead of the game?
Well, a big part of it is those digital investments we talked about. Like, remember how they just upgraded their e-commerce platform?
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't just about, making the website look prettier. It was about creating a foundation for a much more personalized and interactive experience.
So, like, what kind of stuff can we expect to see?
Well, imagine this. You go onto their website and you take a quick quiz or maybe even upload a selfie.
Okay.
And then their system uses AI to analyze your skin.
Wow.
And it gives you personalized product recommendations.
That'd be amazing.
Right. Like no more guessing games. You know exactly what products are right for you.
That's so cool.
And they're also looking at virtual try-on technology that goes way beyond just lipstick and eyeshadow.
Really?
Yeah, like think about virtual hairstyling.
Wow.
Or even full face makeup simulations.
That would be a game changer.
It would. And it's not just about, individual experiences. They're also using social media to build this sense of community.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Like imagine virtual beauty events where you can connect with other people, try on new looks together, get advice from experts.
That would be so fun. Okay, so all this sounds amazing. But can Ulta actually afford to invest in all this cutting-edge technology?
That's the beauty of their strong financial performance. They hit $10 billion in net sales.
Right.
That gives them the resources to invest in their future. Plus, they're not just throwing money around. They're really good at managing costs and optimizing their operations.
So they're being smart about it.
Exactly.
Now, another thing that's really important these days is sustainability. Consumers are more aware than ever about the environmental and social impact of their purchases.
Absolutely. And Ulta knows that.
So what are they doing about it?
Well, for starters, they're taking steps to reduce their own environmental footprint, like using more sustainable packaging and minimizing waste in their stores and distribution centers.
Okay, that's good. But what about the brands they carry? Are they making sure those brands are sustainable too?
Yeah, they're definitely putting more emphasis on partnering with brands that are committed to ethical sourcing and sustainable practices.
That's great to hear.
And they're also scrutinizing their supply chains, to make sure workers are treated fairly and that environmental regulations are being followed.
It's a complex issue for sure. But it sounds like they're taking it seriously.
They are.
Okay, so let's talk money for a minute. Can you break down Ulta's financial structure for those of us who aren't, financial experts?
Sure. So one key thing is their credit facility.
Credit facility?
Basically, it's like a giant credit card for the company.
Okay.
It gives them access to funds when they need them. So it's kind of like a safety net.
So if they need to make a big investment or if there's an unexpected expense, they can tap into that credit facility.
Exactly.
But what about their day-to-day finances?
Well, they have a sophisticated system for managing their cash flow, making sure they pay their bills on time, and they have a team of experts who handle their taxes.
So they've got it all under control.
They do.
Now, remember those lease agreements we talked about? With all their stores, they must have a lot of lease obligations.
You're right. Their leases are a big part of their expenses. But the good news is that the report provides a lot of detail about those leases.
Like what kind of detail?
Well, like the terms of the leases, the renewal options, the payments that are due.
But it's all transparent.
It is. And that allows investors to really understand, the company's long-term commitments.
So it's not just about how much money they're making today. It's about how they're managing their finances for the future.
Exactly.
And one thing that I think is often overlooked in these reports is the legal side of things.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Like behind all the numbers and the business strategies, there are all these legal agreements that govern how Ulta operates.
For sure. And this report actually goes into quite a bit of detail about their credit facility agreement.
Really?
Yeah, it's like getting a glimpse into the legal engine room of the company.
So what kind of stuff does it cover?
Well, like the terms and conditions, the responsibilities of the lenders and the borrowers, the procedures for handling things like defaults or amendments.
Wow, so it's pretty comprehensive.
It is.
What about the people side of things? Like, how does Ulta approach corporate governance and ethical conduct?
Well, their board of directors and their audit committee play a big role in that. They oversee the company's operations, make sure everything is transparent, and they promote ethical decision-making.
So they're the watchdogs.
You could say that. And Ulta also has a code of business conduct that guides their employees and their interactions with vendors and partners.
So they're really trying to do business the right way.
They are.
Okay, so we've talked about Ulta's digital innovations, their sustainability efforts, their financial management, their legal framework, their corporate governance. It's clear that they're a company that's thinking about the long term.
Absolutely.
But there's still challenges ahead, right?
Oh, for sure.
The beauty industry is constantly changing.
It is. New trends emerge. New technologies disrupt the status quo. Consumer expectations are always evolving.
So how can Ulta stay ahead of the curve?
Well, I think the key is going to be their ability to anticipate those changes and adapt their strategies, and to keep delivering a compelling and relevant experience for their customers.
That makes sense.
Like, it's not enough to just react to what's happening. They need to be proactive. They need to be innovative.
And they need to keep their customers happy.
Exactly.
It's amazing to think about how much Ulta has changed. Like, they started as a regular, brick and mortar store.
Yeah.
And now they're this powerhouse of innovation.
Yeah.
Especially online.
Yeah, they've come a long way. And it shows how adaptable they are. Like, they're not afraid to embrace new technologies, try new things.
Right. They're not just sitting back and watching the world go by. They're out there shaping the future of beauty.
Exactly.
But let's be honest for a second. The beauty industry is super competitive.
It is.
So what are some of the biggest challenges that Ulta might face in the next few years?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is going to be staying ahead of the technology curve. Like, we've talked about all the digital investments they're making.
Right.
But technology moves so fast these days.
It does.
They're going to have to be constantly evaluating new technologies, figuring out which ones are worth investing in.
And which ones are just hype.
Exactly.
So it's not just about adopting every new gadget that comes along.
Yeah.
It's about being strategic.
Right. It's about finding the technologies that will actually make a difference for their customers.
And that will help them stand out from the competition.
Exactly.
Now, another challenge I see is managing their relationships with all those brand partners.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Because on the one hand, they want to keep those strong relationships with the big established brands.
Right.
But they also need to be looking for new and innovative brands.
Especially as the beauty landscape becomes more and more fragmented.
Right. Like there's so many new brands popping up all the time.
There are. And a lot of them are really appealing to younger consumers.
We're always looking for the next big thing.
Exactly.
So Ulta has to walk this fine line.
They do. They need to keep their core customers happy. But they also need to attract new customers.
And appeal to different demographics.
Right.
Now, another thing that's becoming more and more important is sustainability.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Consumers are really demanding more transparency from brands.
They are. They want to know where their products are coming from, how they're made, what the environmental impact is.
They want to support brands that align with their values.
Exactly.
So Ulta needs to make sure that they're walking the walk.
They do. They can't just talk about sustainability. They have to actually be doing it.
And they have to be able to prove it.
Right. They need to show their customers that they're serious about sustainability.
So it's clear that Ulta has a lot to think about, a lot of challenges to navigate.
They do.
But they've also shown that they're capable of adapting and innovating.
They have.
And they seem to really understand their customers.
They do.
So what does all this mean for us? Like for us as beauty consumers, as investors, as just people who are interested in the world of beauty.
Well, I think it means that Ulta is a company worth paying attention to. They're a really good example of how to build a successful brand in a constantly changing industry.
And they're a reminder that even in the face of all these challenges, innovation and adaptability are key.
Absolutely.
So the next time you're in an Ulta store or browsing their website, think about all the things we've talked about.
All the complexities.
All the moving parts
about all the behind-the-scenes
that
things.
goes into making that experience happen.
And keep your eyes open for what they do next, because I have a feeling they're just getting started.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into Ulta Beauty. We've covered a lot of ground today, from their business model and their growth strategies to their financial performance and the risks they're facing.
We've looked at their digital innovations, their sustainability efforts, even their approach to corporate governance.
It's been a fascinating journey, and we hope you've learned a lot.
We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of what makes Ulta Beauty such a successful company.
And more importantly, we hope you've been inspired to think critically about the beauty industry, to question the status quo, to embrace innovation, and to demand more from the brands you support.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, stay curious.